I am 28 years old and 8 months pregnant with my wife Ella, who is 26 years old and our first child. A little background. My family has a tradition where the eldest daughters have an alternating pattern of 2 letters that begin their first name. For example, Vivian, Tessa, Violet, Tori. My wife's family has a tradition that the eldest girl's name ends with a certain 4 letters. We'll go with Ella for an example. My wife has been vetoing my name suggestions left and right for the entire 4 months we've known that we're having a girl. I've suggested everything I can think of from my tradition, with my wife saying no to every one of them, except ones she knows I absolutely despise, before redirecting me to names from her own family's tradition. The issue is that there are no names between our 2 traditions that would actually work, with a very limited number of names actually being names in the first place. What we have to work with are names that look like amalgamations of 2 names. Think of something along the lines of Veronicella. It has gotten to the point where I tried to suggest a name last week, and she cut me off on the first syllable and suggested names from her own tradition instead. My suggestions are not outrageous either. They are very normal names, maybe a few of them a bit out there, but nothing too unusual. And I'm not unreasonable. I understand that we will honor both traditions, but both cannot fit in the first name together without being some amalgamation of a normal name with her family's tradition stuck on at the end. I have tried suggesting having one of our traditions be the middle name, and she has turned that down and told me to stick to my own family's tradition while she sticks to hers. 2 days ago, I suggested a name I had been holding off on suggesting because I really liked it, and I knew it would hurt to have it vetoed, as I knew she would since I've liked that name since I was a kid. She told me that the name was disgusting and awful, and she would never agree to it over her dead body. She then went off on me, yelling that she regrets going through everything to have a baby with me because, in her own words, "You're becoming a real jerk about these stupid baby names. I should name the baby alone anyway, since you're the one who carried it to make the marriage even." She then just stopped talking to me and left for her brother's house over an hour away. I tried to text her this morning, once I was certain we would both have calmed down, asking why I wasn't allowed to have an opinion on our daughter's name, but she didn't read or respond to it. We have a deadline of 4 weeks until our daughter arrives, and she won't even talk to me at all. Our mutual friend group doesn't want to touch the discussion with a 10-foot pole and says it's between me and my wife. So Reddit, am I the antagonist for wanting to have an opinion in our daughter's name, or am I overstepping since I'm the one who is pregnant and she's not, and should I just let her get the name as her own decision? To add for all those suggesting it, I have tried to suggest names outside of tradition that I like, but they have also been shot down, and the suggestion of breaking tradition has been met with, in her own words, "We have to follow tradition. That's just how it is. Don't be silly. That's the dumbest suggestion yet." I am willing to abandon traditional names and even have a whole list of names that aren't from either naming tradition that I would happily choose from instead. But she has consistently vetoed every name on that list as well, and told me to follow tradition. To add consistent notes in the comments. 1. Communication issue. Ella and I extensively talked through potential name issues before trying to conceive, with the agreement in place that we would drop tradition-based names entirely if either of us couldn't agree on a name. We were on the same page going into this pregnancy. This agreement seems to have changed for Ella once we found out it was a girl. 2. Starting a tradition of our own. I can't tell her we could start a tradition of our own instead of either family tradition or dropping tradition-based names at this point with her cutting off contact with me. She is not being reasonable at this point, and she won't even respond or pick up a call from me. 3. Parentage. Yes, I am the only biological parent. No, she has no blood ties to my daughter. Also, we are both women, unlike what some comments suggest about us. I am the one carrying the child, not her. 4. Ella's resentment of me being the one pregnant. Ella had a full hysterectomy a year before we started trying to conceive. She does not want to get pregnant herself, period. She knew full well going into the trying to conceive journey with me, that I would be the one pregnant, not her, as she has no means of carrying a child. 5. Traditions are dumb, suck, stupid, meant to be broken. Yeah, I know. Thus why I suggested ditching them in the first place. Again, the agreement to drop family naming traditions that we made prior to the pregnancy. She is blatantly ignoring it, while I have dropped naming tradition names out of my input once I was sure she would refuse any input. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot holy hell, what is up with her? That's an incredibly cruel and unnecessary way to behave. Christ, do you have someone who you can rely on right now? I'm asking because if she's not picking up and you're obviously stressed out, it'd be good to have someone reliable nearby or with you as you are late in your pregnancy. If she's going to behave this way, then you need a larger support system outside of her. Also, sorry, naming the child to make the marriage even? This wasn't discussed before trying for a child, and she has been unreasonable and uncompromising throughout the naming process. So bringing this up now as a way to make the marriage even is nonsense. Does she have other issues with the marriage? To say she regrets going through the process with you and calling you a derogatory term, that's what's disgusting, not a name suggestion. How about you both make a new tradition? It hasn't been working to find a name you both like that honors both of your family traditions, but you're creating new life, a new family, and new traditions. Find a name that doesn't come from either family tradition. Maybe find a few options. You may have some time after birth to decide on a final name so you can determine then what's fitting. Comment 2. No idiots here. Your traditions are unhelpful. What I said is not nice. It's judgmental and disrespectful. I know, but that's all I take from your whole post. If you have to choose between unsatisfactory names or names you don't like, maybe it's time to throw family traditions out the window and settle for a name you both like. You've been trying and failing for months. It wouldn't be fair for either of you to have more of a say. You'll have to find a compromise. Watch out for false compromises that end up building resentment. Now, for the update. A couple days after the fight, Ella came back home, but she was still really distant. We only talked about the basics, like who was taking out the trash and stuff. I thought about maybe trying to fix things, but it felt like she needed space, so I left her alone and focused on getting the nursery ready for our daughter. It's crazy to think about having a little one around, but we really needed to get things sorted in there. One day, my mom came over to help with the nursery stuff. I didn't tell her about the fight because, honestly, I just wanted some normalcy for a bit. She was in a good mood, chatting away about all the cute baby stuff, and it was nice to have her around, even though it was a bit awkward with Ella. While we were setting up the crib, my mom brought up the name suggestions from my family again. I knew she was just trying to help, but it set Ella off, and we got into another argument. She snapped and said she didn't want to hear any more names from my family. My mom looked kinda hurt, and I felt bad because I didn't want to put her in the middle of this. Later that day, Ella's brother called and asked if everything was okay. Ella must have told him something was up because he could tell she was off. I didn't want to get into it with him, so I just said we were fine. I felt bad lying, but I didn't want to drag anyone else into our mess. One evening, I found a message from Ella on my phone. She wanted to have a family meeting about the baby. I had a bad feeling about it, but I didn't know what else to do at that point. The next day, her brother, sister, and their parents came over for the meeting. It was super tense, and I could feel the pressure on my chest. Ella started talking about how she wanted to name the baby, insisting on following her family's tradition. I tried to propose a compromise, suggesting we could blend both traditions in the name, but it just made things worse. Her parents were all on her side, saying they didn't get why I couldn't just accept her choice. Ella's dad even raised his voice, saying it was disrespectful to question their customs. Ella's mom chimed in too, insisting that I was being unreasonable. I just needed a moment away from all of it, so I left the room to cool off. When I came back, I heard Ella crying in the hallway. Her brother was trying to comfort her, and it just broke my heart. I felt like the bad guy in this whole situation, and I couldn't shake that feeling. Ella then dropped a huge surprise on us, saying she was reconsidering our relationship if we couldn't agree on the name. I had no idea it was that serious for her. This was the first time she mentioned anything like that, and it blindsided me. After the meeting, she sent me a message saying she needed time alone. That was a week ago, and we haven't really talked since. I've been trying to focus on work to distract myself, but it's been tough. The other day, she sent me a text saying she was staying with her brother until further notice. I know it's for the best, but it still stings. My parents have been really supportive, so they invited me to their house for dinner the other night. During dinner, they asked how everything was going with Ella, and my dad suggested I should just let her choose the name. I kind of snapped at him, saying it was a shared decision and I deserved a say in it. I know he was just trying to help, but it was frustrating to hear that from him. A few days later, Ella came home out of nowhere and said she wanted to talk about the baby. I was shocked to see her and kind of nervous too. I prepared a list of name options, hoping we could find some common ground. During the discussion, she said she had already decided on a name. I was stunned, honestly. She told me it was after her grandmother, and that was just a complete change from what we talked about before. I pointed out that the name didn't honor any of my family's traditions, and we got into another argument. She accused me of not valuing her family, and things got heated. I was ready to leave, but then I noticed she was starting to have contractions. We both kind of froze for a second, realizing we had to get to the hospital. In the chaos of it all, I couldn't shake the feeling that we still hadn't agreed on a name. It was like this huge cloud hanging over us as we rushed out the door to the hospital. At the hospital, everything was a blur. We delivered our daughter, and in that moment, we named her after Ella's grandmother. I accepted it because we didn't have time to argue. It wasn't what I wanted, but I just went with it for the sake of our daughter. To answer a few questions, the name I suggested that Ella found disgusting was Gina. Ella's family has an Ina tradition for names, and my family has a pattern of naming daughters after the firstborn. The name I wanted was Gina, after my grandmother. Am I the idiot for refusing to live with my roommate's silent sister and being called ableist for it? So I live with a female, 21 years old, called Holly, who I met at university, and after finishing, we moved in together. I'm also female, 21 years old. Holly has a little sister, Emily, female, 18 years old, who's autistic, and I would like you to keep in mind for this situation that I am also autistic. Recently, at Holly's work, there has been a part-time 1-month contract available. So after giving her sister the job, she asked me if Emily could move in for a month. I felt a bit uncomfortable with it being a month, only because our flat is tiny and she wouldn't be contributing to rent, bills, etc. But since Holly had already given her the job, I felt a bit backed into a corner and said yes. So she's moved in, and it's the most awkward situation I've ever been in. She won't speak to me at all, apart from one word here and there. As I'm also autistic, I understand autism pretty well, and after having conversations with Holly, I would like to clarify her sister isn't selectively mute, she just doesn't want to talk to me. I understand that to an extent, as after work, I also like to have a chill time in my room with little social interaction. But this has gotten to the point where she won't even say hello to me. I've tried everything, giving her space, inviting her to movie nights, or asking about her special interests and hobbies. She just looks at me with the white guy smile, rolls her eyes, and gives me a one-word answer. It's painful. I feel a bit unsure of what to do, so I've left her to interact with me when she chooses. Everything is very awkward. Holly and I were planning to live together next year too. As of yesterday, this might have changed. She pulled me aside and said her sister is really liking the city and wants to move in with us next year. This wouldn't be as bad since she would be paying her own rent, but I'm just not sure I could live with her. There is no level of friendship, and I just think it would be uncomfortable for everyone involved. So I politely said to Holly, "No, I'm really sorry. I'm not sure that would be a good choice for any of us involved, as Emily and I don't really speak, and I think it would be awkward. But if you want to live with Emily, I understand, and it's not a problem. I'll sort out my situation and live elsewhere." I'm not a confrontational person and get quite scared, but I try to stick to facts as much as possible without upsetting anyone. Holly then turned around and called me an ableist and said, I just don't want to live with her sister because she's autistic. To be honest, I could not care less that she's autistic, as I'm autistic myself, which she knows, and most of my friends are autistic. What I care about is being friends with the people I live with, and Emily and I literally don't speak. Holly is very upset with my answer, and so am I with the situation. Am I the bad person for not letting her sister live with us? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Some people just don't mesh well, especially when living together. It sounds like your decision has nothing to do with her diagnosis and just the fact that you two aren't good roommates. There's nothing wrong with that. One of my closest friends was my roommate for about 1.5 years, and by the end of it, we were so tired of seeing each other that we didn't talk for about 2 months. But then things went back to normal with more space between us. It's just something that happens when people spend a lot of time together. Comment 2. No, you're not. You were honest and kind and expressed yourself just fine. Holly should understand that just because Emily is autistic, it doesn't mean her habits and such reflect all people who are also autistic. She should be respectful of your boundaries as well, and having to tiptoe in your own place seems ridiculous. No matter that you are both autistic, you are both people, and not all people get along. Oil and water, find your pond. Now for the update. 2 days after my last post, the flat was even more uncomfortable. Holly and I barely talked, and when we did, it was all awkward and tense. Like I had this constant knot in my stomach every time I heard her come through the door. I was just sitting there, minding my own business, and I could feel that knot tightening up. So, to try to make things less weird, Holly suggested a family dinner at her parents' place. She thought it would help lighten the mood. So, the dinner was planned for Saturday night, giving everyone a chance to prepare for the evening. I wasn't sure how a family dinner was going to fix anything, but I just went along with it. I helped Holly get everything ready, trying to keep things as normal as possible. We cooked together, set the table, all that good stuff. Emily was invited, but she just kind of shrugged it off like it wasn't a big deal. I don't even think she said anything when Holly asked her about it. Anyway, the night of the dinner came, and I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. On one hand, I was looking forward to some good food and meeting Holly's family. On the other hand, I was worried about the awkward situation that no one wanted to talk about. When we got to Holly's parents' house, everything seemed fine. Like, her parents had no clue there was any kind of issue between Holly and me. They were just happy to see us, you know? So, we all sat down at the dinner table, and things started off pretty chill. That is, until Jake, Holly's older brother, brought up a recent trip he'd taken with his wife. He was just talking about how beautiful the flowers were and how much his wife loved it. And then he casually asked if Emily had any plans for the future, trying to include her in the conversation. Emily just sat there like a statue, all quiet and stuff. So, Holly jumped in and started talking about Emily's job and what she wanted to do. I could see Emily fidgeting with her hands and avoiding eye contact, and it looked like it was driving Holly crazy. Then, out of nowhere, Holly turned to me and asked me to share something about myself to lighten the mood. Still, I could tell she wanted me to say something interesting, something that would make everyone perk up. So, I mentioned a recent project at work that I was really excited about. I thought it would be a good way to engage everyone at the table. But then, of course, Holly interrupted me. She just had to shift the focus back to Emily, suggesting we all celebrate her achievements. And that just sparked a mini argument between Holly and me about how important it is for everyone to share the conversation, not just one person. Holly's parents were sitting there looking confused, trying to mediate and calm everyone down, but it just made things worse. After dinner, I went to help clean up the kitchen, just feeling this heavy weight on my shoulders. As I was washing the dishes, trying to focus on the bubbles and the hot water, Emily suddenly stood up from the table and announced she was leaving, saying she wasn't hungry anymore. Holly just got up and followed her like a lost puppy, leaving me there alone with her parents, who looked so confused. They were like, "What's going on?" And I just smiled and said, "Oh, just a little family drama." Later that night, when I was cleaning up in the kitchen, Holly came in and confronted me. She told me I ruined the dinner, and I just stood there, stunned. I told her that it was Emily's choice to withdraw from the conversation. She was the one who decided to clam up and not say anything. Holly got all defensive and accused me of being unsupportive. We ended up having this huge argument in the kitchen, like two kids fighting over a toy. I just couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to leave the flat for a while to cool off. I went for a long walk, trying to clear my head. I didn't want to go back home and sit in silence with Holly. While I was out, I stumbled upon this local art gallery that was hosting an exhibit that night. So I just walked in, and it was like a breath of fresh air. The colors, the people, just everything was so vibrant and full of life. I spent hours there just wandering around and looking at the art. When I finally went back home, I heard Holly and Emily talking about the dinner and the argument. Holly was saying stuff about how she doubted my commitment to our living arrangement. I just stood there, like a ghost, listening to everything. I decided then and there that I needed to confront Holly the next day. I was done with this silent treatment and all the passive-aggressive stuff. The next morning, Holly was still upset and avoided eye contact over breakfast. I could tell she was still mad, so I just took a deep breath and brought up the idea of taking a break from living together. I thought it would help us both gain some clarity on the situation. Her face just fell when I said that. She looked so hurt and accused me of abandoning her when she needed support the most. I reminded her that communication was key to a healthy living situation, and if we couldn't talk to each other, then it was better to take a break. We both agreed to take a few days apart to think things through. For the next few days, I focused on my work and my personal interests. I tried to distract myself from the mess that was my living situation. As the weekend approached, I received a text from Holly asking for a family meeting. I was like, oh boy, here we go. During the meeting, Holly revealed she had been thinking about moving out with Emily. She said they would start looking for a new place immediately. I just sat there, taking it all in, and I could feel my heart sinking. Edit. Holly and I have been living alone since last week. Emily chose to move out with Holly, and they found a new place. Our friendship is on the mend, and we're communicating better now. Am I the idiot for refusing to change my healthy lifestyle despite my overweight father's hostility? My dad is quite overweight. We are the same height, but he weighs about 50 pounds more than I do. He has large, saggy breasts, a bulging potbelly, a very short neck, and a chubby face. I work out regularly, and that's why I'm fit and in shape. Recently, my dad has been more hostile toward me, repeatedly commenting on my appearance and diet. He said that I need to eat more. He eats a lot at meals and for snacks, whereas I eat a moderate portion. And he says that working out every day is bad for my health. I just do 20 minutes of cardio and free weights mostly at home, but he says that too much exercise will ruin my body. He even scolds me when I occasionally skip a meal because I'm not that hungry. What he says has been getting on my nerves lately. Last night, I was going to the basement to exercise, and my dad told me that I had already exercised every day for the past 6 days. I said that I like to work out daily, and he said that I am going to end up like my sister, who developed an eating disorder in middle school, and because of that is short and underweight to this day, though she recovered around 9th grade. He said that for a long time she ate just 1 or 2 meals a day and spent 2 to 3 hours exercising each day. In fact, I only skip a meal once in a while, and I exercise about 30 minutes per day. He kept saying that my behavior is unhealthy and that I need to take a break from exercising and not obsess over my appearance. I explained that I'm not obsessing over my appearance, but I just want to stay healthy, de-stress regularly, and maintain heart and lung strength. He still said that I am giving him flashbacks to when my sister had an eating disorder, and he said that he cannot repeat this mistake. He said that if his children have eating disorders, it reflects on his failures as a parent. I reiterated that I don't have body image issues and that I just value physical fitness. He kept lecturing and criticizing me, And finally, I told him that he might just be jealous of my appearance because of how much he has been commenting on it lately. I said that if he wants to be healthy, he should eat less and exercise a few times a week, and that it's better to be fit than overweight or underweight. He got really angry and said that he cares about me and doesn't want me to have disordered eating or body image issues, and that it's a red flag that I exercise every single day. I said that I work out because I care about my health, not so much my appearance, and that if he were in shape, he wouldn't have been so sore about it. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Everyone sucks here. Sounds like your dad doesn't know what he's talking about and is just being a clown. However, I think your attitude is excessive for a conversation with your father, who is apparently still supporting you if you are living in his house. I think you are right to correct him, but you should do it more constructively, pointing out the benefits to him. And if you wanted to wind him up a little bit, you could start trying to encourage him to join you and show him evidence of how it will benefit him. He will hate it, but you might be able to educate him and annoy him at the same time. If my son spoke to me that way when he is 20, I would kick him out of my house. Mind you, if my son wanted to work out for 30 minutes each day, I would not criticize it. I would view it as a good thing. Comment 2. Not the idiot. There are many studies on how 30 minutes of exercise is the minimum people should get each day to have optimal health. I got so frustrated at my parents telling me that exercising every day and eating a plant-centered diet was bad for me that I felt the urge to snap at my mom like you did. It is hard to see my parents dealing with health issues because of their lifestyle, but that is their life, and the best I can do is live mine. Maybe see if you can get your dad involved in some light exercise with you, but your reaction to the constant criticism seems understandable. Now, for the update. 3 days after my last argument with my dad, I got a text from him asking to meet for dinner. I was honestly surprised he reached out, but I agreed, hoping to clear things up about our fitness habits or whatever. We ended up going to this local steakhouse that we used to go to all the time as a family. I love that place, and the food is fire. My dad arrived early, which was kind of surprising. He looked super tense, just fiddling with his phone and not really making eye contact. Yeah, great start to the evening. So, during dinner, he started bringing up our last conversation. He kept saying he just wants what's best for my health and all that. I listened, but honestly, I felt like we were just going in circles. He still didn't get my side. He started talking about his own struggles with weight, saying he didn't want me to go down the same path. Like, okay, but I'm not struggling, Dad. I tried explaining that my fitness routine isn't even about weight for me. It's about wellness and managing stress. But then he brought up my sister's past eating disorder again. Like, why are you doing that? I felt so frustrated. I pointed out how comparing me to my sister is just unfair and hurtful, but he didn't really care. This whole thing escalated when he raised his voice, saying he was just trying to protect me. Other diners were glancing over, and honestly, I felt so embarrassed. At that point, I just stood up and said, I didn't want to continue this conversation. He insisted I sit back down, but I just walked out of the restaurant. Outside, I got a call from my mom, who heard about the argument from my dad. She basically suggested I reconsider how I approach the situation with my dad. I mean, I get that she's trying to help, but it's hard when she's on his side too. A few days passed, and I decided to host a family dinner at my place, hoping for a fresh start. I bought groceries and prepared a healthy meal that showcased my fitness journey. I wanted them to see that. The family arrived, including my dad, who seemed hesitant but polite. The atmosphere was awkward, and the small talk felt forced. I tried to keep the conversation light, but I could sense my dad's disapproval of the food choices. During dinner, he made this sarcastic remark about the rabbit food being served. I just responded, saying, I enjoy this way of eating, and it's not just for looks. My sister tried to mediate, but my dad got defensive, claiming I was too obsessed with health. I finally lost my patience and declared I was done with the constant criticism. He stood up, visibly angry, and demanded to know why I was being so stubborn. My sister tried to intervene again, but things were escalating quickly. I told him I needed space and couldn't keep engaging in these arguments. Then he stormed out, saying he's disappointed, and left my sister shocked. A few days later, I got a text from my dad saying he had time to think. He proposed a family meeting to discuss our issues and how to move forward. I hesitated but agreed, seeing it as a chance to set some boundaries. We scheduled the meeting for the following weekend at my parents' house. I spent the week preparing for the conversation, thinking about what I wanted to say. On the day of the meeting, I arrived early to gather my thoughts. My dad and sister arrived shortly after, both looking uneasy. The conversation began, and my dad immediately brought up the same concerns. I calmly stated that I wouldn't change my lifestyle and wanted him to respect that. He countered, saying he couldn't support me if I was making unhealthy choices. I just stood up and told them they needed to focus on their own lives and health. Things are still complicated, and I know I have to be careful about how I communicate with my dad. I get that he's trying to protect me in his own way, but honestly, I just want him to see that I'm not his past mistakes. I'm still figuring out how to set those boundaries without cutting him out completely. I'll make sure to post an update if anything big happens, though. Edit. My dad is in his late 50s. He has been struggling with his weight for over 20 years. He has tried various diets and programs, but nothing has given him lasting results. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.